From the dawn of time, humanity has looked at the mountains of life, the obstacles, the impossibilities, and wondered how they could ever be moved, how the walls could ever come down, how the chains could ever be broken. And in every generation, God has raised up voices that declare the same eternal truth, that faith the size of a mustard seed can move mountains, that faith rooted in the promises of God can transform lives, that faith ignited by the Spirit can turn despair into hope, defeat into victory, weakness into strength, and darkness into light. And among those voices, Kenneth E. Hagin stood as a testimony to the reality that faith is not theory but power. Faith is not philosophy but experience. Faith is not wishful thinking but divine certainty. And when we talk about faith that moves mountains, we are not talking about empty words. We are talking about a power that touches the invisible realm and brings change into the visible. We are talking about a confidence that refuses to surrender in the face of impossibility. We are talking about a conviction that holds on when everything else is shaking. We are talking about a vision that sees the unseen and refuses to bow to the temporary. And Kenneth Hagin reminded his generation again and again that faith is not complicated. Faith is not reserved for the few. Faith is not locked away for the special. Faith is for every believer. Faith is for every child of God. Faith is for every dreamer who dares to believe. And the moment you believe the impossible begins to bow, the moment you trust, the mountain begins to move. The moment you declare the word of God with conviction, the circumstances begin to shift. Because faith is not just in your mind, it is in your spirit, it is in your confession, it is in your perseverance, it is in your refusal to let go. And when we talk about the 12 keys to transform your life, we are talking about the practical dimensions of living faith. The keys that unlock the doors to power, the principles that anchor you when the storm is raging, the truths that sustain you when the night is long, the realities that empower you when everything seems impossible. Because faith is not built in comfort. Faith is forged in the fire. Faith is not shaped in ease. Faith is strengthened in the struggle. Faith is not tested in the sunshine. Faith is proven in the storm. And when you understand this, you realize that every trial is an opportunity. Every mountain is a platform. Every impossibility is an invitation to trust. And every struggle is a doorway to glory. And this is why Kenneth Hagin spoke so often of the authority of the believer, the reality that you are not powerless, the truth that you are not abandoned, the certainty that heaven backs the voice of faith. Because when you speak the word in alignment with God's promises, you are not speaking as a weak individual, but as a representative of heaven. You are not speaking as one who is begging, but as one who is standing in covenant. You are not speaking as one who is hoping vaguely, but as one who is assured by the unshakable word of God. And that is why mountains move. That is why darkness trembles. That is why chains break. That is why miracles happen. Not because of human ability, but because of divine faith. And when you dare to believe, you align with a power greater than the universe. You align with a truth greater than circumstances. You align with a strength greater than any enemy. And that alignment is what transforms your life. That alignment is what carries you from despair to hope. That alignment is what brings heaven into earth. And so today, as we reflect on faith that moves mountains and the 12 keys that transform life, we realize it is not about theories but about reality. It is not about religion but about relationship. It is not about fear but about courage. It is not about defeat but about victory. And if you hold on to this truth, you will see the mountains in your life bow. You will see the chains in your life break. You will see the doors in your life open. You will see the impossible in your life bow to the God of the possible. And this is the faith that Kenneth E. Hagin carried. This is the faith that Dr. David Yonggi Cho preached. This is the faith that the Word of God declares, and this is the faith that you are invited to walk in today, because faith does not belong to yesterday. Faith is for today. Faith is for now. Faith is the victory that overcomes the world. And as we continue to reflect on the unshakable reality of faith that moves mountains, we see that this faith is not abstract. It is not an idea floating in the clouds. It is living, breathing, practical, and it manifests in daily choices, in the words we speak, in the thoughts we allow, in the attitudes we carry, in the perseverance we demonstrate. And Kenneth Hagin emphasized again and again that faith begins where the will of God is known, that until you anchor your confidence in what God has promised, you cannot stand when the winds blow, you cannot endure when the fire burns, you cannot hold fast when the storm rages. But once you know that you know that you know, once you are anchored in the eternal word, once you have hidden the promises deep in your heart, no force of darkness can uproot you, no whisper of doubt can paralyze you, no scheme of the enemy can defeat you, because faith is not built on feelings, faith is built on the word, faith is not built on emotion, faith is built on truth, faith is not built on the temporary, faith is built on the eternal. And this is why faith can move mountains, because mountains are temporary, but the word of God is eternal. Problems are temporary, but the promises of God are eternal. Trials are temporary, but victory is eternal. Storms are temporary, but peace is eternal. And if you will see through the eyes of faith, you will never be trapped by the present. You will never be deceived by appearances. You will never be paralyzed by impossibility, because you will know that behind the visible there is an invisible. Behind the physical there is a spiritual. Behind the natural there is a supernatural. And when you align yourself with that supernatural reality, mountains cannot stand before you. Giants cannot intimidate you. Fear cannot control you, and impossibility cannot define you. And Kenneth Hagin pointed us to the fact that words carry power, that faith speaks, that the tongue is not just a tool of communication, but a weapon of creation, that the universe itself was framed by the word of God, that worlds came into being by divine declaration. And if God framed creation by words, then your words also matter, your confession matters, your declaration matters, your agreement matters. Because faith must be spoken, faith must be declared, faith must be released. And many people wonder why they do not see transformation. But often they speak defeat, they confess fear, they declare impossibility, and their words build prisons instead of doors. But when you begin to speak faith, when you begin to declare the promises, when you begin to align your tongue with truth, you begin to build bridges into destiny. You begin to open doors into possibility. You begin to release power into the atmosphere. And that is why Kenneth Hagin always emphasized speaking the word, confessing the promises, declaring the truth. Because your confession is not empty. Your confession is backed by heaven. Your confession is not powerless. Your confession is empowered by the Spirit. Your confession is not ignored. Your confession is amplified in the unseen realm. And so when you declare by faith that the mountain shall move, the mountain has no choice but to obey. When you declare by faith that the chains are broken, the chains have no choice but to fall. When you declare by faith that the way is open, the way has no choice but to be revealed, because heaven honors faith, heaven responds to faith, heaven partners with faith. And this is why life is transformed, not by accident, but by alignment, not by chance, but by conviction, not by wishful thinking, but by believing and speaking. And when you hold to this, your life cannot remain the same. Your atmosphere cannot remain the same. Your destiny cannot remain the same. Because faith transforms, faith shifts, faith elevates, faith creates. And as you meditate on these truths, you begin to realize that the 12 keys to transform your life are not separate from faith. They are dimensions of faith. They are expressions of faith. They are applications of faith. And as you begin to practice them, your mountains begin to move, your storms begin to calm, your giants begin to fall, and your valleys begin to rise, because faith is not passive, faith is active, faith is not silent, faith is vocal, faith is not hidden, faith is visible. And when faith becomes the center of your being, you walk differently, you think differently, you speak differently, you live differently, and your life becomes a testimony that faith truly moves mountains. And as we move into the deeper layers of this revelation of faith that moves mountains, Kenneth Hagin reminded us again and again that faith is not only about receiving from God, it is also about living with God. It is about walking in harmony with His Word. It is about aligning our inner life with His presence. It is about cultivating an atmosphere where faith is not something we visit on Sundays, but something we carry every moment, something we breathe every hour, something that shapes our identity and character. And when this faith saturates your being, it changes the way you look at challenges, because suddenly challenges are not enemies. They are opportunities. Trials are not stumbling blocks. They are stepping stones. Storms are not final. They are temporary. Valleys are not defeats. They are training grounds. And giants are not too big to defeat. They are too big to miss. And this mindset is what Kenneth Hagin called the victorious mindset of faith. Because once you see life through the lens of victory, you cannot be intimidated by temporary setbacks. You cannot be shaken by delay. You cannot be paralyzed by impossibility, because you know that if God is for you, who can be against you? If God has spoken, who can silence His word? If God has promised, who can cancel His covenant? And it is this kind of confidence that makes faith unstoppable, unshakable, and unmovable. And so we see that one of the keys to living a transformed life is persistence in faith. Never letting go, never backing down, never surrendering, because faith is not about instant gratification. It is about enduring conviction. It is about standing when nothing seems to change. It is about believing when every evidence screams the opposite. It is about holding the line when others walk away. It is about saying with conviction that I know whom I have believed. I know He is faithful. I know He is able. I know He is true. And in that persistence, you discover that mountains do not move because of emotion. They move because of endurance. They move because of unrelenting belief. They move because you refuse to quit. And in this, you discover another key, the key of patience. Because faith and patience work together. Faith believes, patience waits, faith declares, patience holds, faith sees, patience perseveres. And when these two flow as one, the impossible bows, the unseen manifests, the supernatural becomes natural, and your life becomes a living witness that God is true, His word is sure, and His promises are reliable. And this revelation alone can carry you through any season. Because when the enemy whispers that nothing is happening, patience whispers, keep waiting. When the storm shouts you are finished, faith declares it is not over. When the valley says you are stuck, persistence says keep moving. And together they lead you into victory. And another dimension Kenneth Hagin revealed is the power of joy in faith. That faith without joy is weak. Faith without joy is fragile. But when joy fuels your faith, it becomes unstoppable, because joy strengthens, joy refreshes, joy renews, joy empowers, and many underestimate the power of joy. But when your faith is coupled with joy, you can laugh at the storm, you can smile in the valley, you can rejoice in the midnight hour, and this confuses the enemy, because he expects fear, but you respond with joy. He expects despair, but you respond with praise. He expects surrender, but you respond with laughter. And that joy itself is a declaration of victory. And another key flows from here, the key of thanksgiving, because thanksgiving waters the seed of faith. Thanksgiving amplifies the voice of faith. Thanksgiving magnifies the presence of God. And Kenneth Hagin always emphasized giving thanks before the manifestation, thanking God before the answer, praising God before the breakthrough, because thanksgiving is not about waiting to see. It is about believing you have received. It is about honoring God as faithful even before your eyes see the evidence. And when you live in this atmosphere of joy and thanksgiving, your faith grows, your life shifts, your mountains tremble, and your destiny accelerates. And as we meditate on all these truths, we see that the life of faith is not complicated. It is simply consistent. It is not about striving harder. It is about trusting deeper. It is not about fighting endlessly. It is about resting securely. It is not about chasing everything. It is about standing firm. And in that standing, you become immovable, unshakable, unstoppable, and your life becomes a beacon to others, a testimony that faith works, that faith is real, that faith transforms, and that faith indeed moves mountains. And so, as Kenneth Hagin concluded again and again, faith is not a theory to admire. It is a reality to live. It is not a concept to discuss. It is a power to demonstrate. It is not a sermon to hear. It is a lifestyle to walk. And when you embrace it fully, you enter into a dimension where nothing is impossible, where mountains bow, where valleys rise, where storms calm, where giants fall, where destiny unfolds, and where your life becomes an ongoing testimony that God is faithful, His word is true, and His power is real. And this is the essence of faith that moves mountains. This is the secret of transformation. This is the invitation for every believer, and this is the eternal truth that will never fail.